Good evening, everybody. Welcome back. So I'm going to just start with a word of prayer, and then I have an interesting talk to give you tonight. Let's bow our heads. Dear God, thank you for your many mercies. We're thankful for your presence in this place. I ask that you would just continue to bless our time together. We're thankful for everything that you've done for us, and we're thankful for Jesus. Amen. Okay. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our dinosaur project at Southwestern and what we're doing to answer this question, what happened to the dinosaurs. So, of course, intuitively, you probably already feel like you know the answer to that question, but how can we study this in a way that we can dialogue with other people and talk to them about what we know? A question that we obviously get a lot is, well, did dinosaurs really exist? So the answer is yes. If they didn't, I definitely would not be spending my summer digging up their bones for the whole month of June. So yes, dinosaurs did exist. Another question we get a lot is, did dinosaurs really look the way that they're depicted in museums? So when you see a dinosaur that's in the museum and it's got like its skin on, did it actually look like that? Well, that's a maybe. So we do our best to try to reconstruct what we think dinosaurs would look like, and we actually have a lot of information, maybe more than you would think. In some cases, scientists have even isolated pigment molecules that would let us know perhaps what color a dinosaur's skin was. We find skin impressions. So we can kind of reconstruct, maybe not always with 100% certainty, but we can get a pretty good idea of what they look like. So how do we know? So what are some ways that we can do this? So I think this is what a lot of people think we do. So we find a piece and then we say, yeah, that definitely looks like this. So it's actually, there's a lot more that goes into it than that. So we're not just completely guessing. So in fact, in some places in the world, you can find basically mummified dinosaurs that are they're pretty well intact. So you can see where all their parts go. So you can compare with those skeletons. Here's another one. This is a mummified hadrosaur. I believe his name is Leonardo. Is that right? Oh, okay, Dr. McClarty doesn't know. That's okay. I think his name's Leonardo. I think he has a name. Yeah, this is a hadrosaur, a duck-billed dinosaur, and basically all his parts are there. So we have a pretty good idea of what they look like. Okay, so even if they're not that intact, we can still find pretty complete skeletons in the ground. So we say this would be like an articulated skeleton, a put-together skeleton. So if most of the parts are there, that gives us a pretty good idea of how they go together and what the dinosaur would look like. So in addition, some other things that can give us clues to maybe what a dinosaur would have looked like or what its structure would have been. We find their trackways. So Dr. McClarty definitely knows about trackways because that is what he studies. But they tell us a lot about dinosaurs. They tell us about how they behaved. And we can find these all over the world. Another thing we find are dinosaur eggs. And in case you're wondering, a lot of people ask us, aren't those just round rocks? Well, if you look inside, you can find dinosaur bones, dinosaur embryos. So yeah, they're not just round rocks. You can actually find intact little baby dinosaurs. So in some of the best cases, you can find a pretty intact body covering. This is like an armor from a dinosaur that had a really tough armor. And so this is a really nice, piece of the dinosaur that you can really see what it looked like on the outside. So there are lots of ways that we can know more about what dinosaurs look like and maybe what they did while they were alive. So of course, the big question that everybody wants to know is what happened to the dinosaurs? So If we want to take a scientific approach to answering this question, we have to consider what are all the working hypotheses? What are all the possible explanations? Because once we know all the possible explanations, we can start putting evidence into each basket, right? And seeing how much evidence is there for each one of those ideas. So here are some that are out there. Too hot? So yeah, maybe climate change, right? Maybe they just got way too hot. It was too hot for the dinosaurs and they all died. Too cold, that's another one. So conditions changed. It just was too cold. It didn't support dinosaur bodies anymore and they died. Too dry. So that's another hypothesis that's out there. Again, it's a climate change issue. So the conditions weren't right and to support dinosaur life. Too wet. So that's another hypothesis that's out there. Another one, not enough food. So a change in conditions where they just didn't have enough food to support their lives. Another one, this is a relatively minor one, poison food. So a change in conditions meant they encountered food that was incompatible with them. This is a big one, so volcanic and tectonic activity, so chaotic changes in the Earth's activity. This one's probably the most famous, right? An asteroid impact, so we get questions about that all the time. And then, of course, this one. So, so global flood, right? So there are multiple hypotheses. I know this image isn't good evidence for whether dinosaurs did or didn't get on the ark, is it? So we still don't know. So all these hypotheses are out there, and our project can help answer the question maybe a little bit in one part of the world. So that's what we're trying to do. So which dinosaurs do we actually find where we work? So I'll introduce you to some of these guys. So this is Edmontosaurus. That's hadrosaur or duck-billed dinosaur. So these guys were big herbivores. They were plant eaters. This is another one of my favorites. This is Anzu. So Anzu is an oviraptor. Nanotyrannus, a pretty famous dinosaur. So we have actually we have quite a few bones from this species, and they're some of the only bones from this species in the world. They're relatively rare. So we have those in our collection at the museum. Dromaeosaurus. So he's kind of like a raptor, sort of. Nodosaurus. So Nodosaurus has this really tough armor on it. So it has these plates on its covering, and they're like bony plates, and they're officially called scutes, but people that come to the Dinosaur Project like to find them, and we have a pet name for them. We call them Nodosaur biscuits, because when you find it, it actually looks like a little biscuit that you dug up. So yeah, so Nodosaurs. Pachycephalosaurus. These guys had really tough, thick skulls for headbutting each other. They probably did exactly what it looks like they would do with a thick skull like that. And Triceratops, of course, is a famous dinosaur. So we find lots of Triceratops bones and sometimes horns and bits of that frill that sticks up. And very famous, T-Rex. So we do find a lot of T-Rex teeth and occasionally bones that would likely be associated with a T-Rex, but mostly teeth. So I'll tell you a little bit about our project. So this is kind of an aerial view of our research station there. So since 1996, paleontologists and geologists, teachers, students like you, and just citizen scientists have been coming out here to the Hansen Research Station, and that's in eastern Wyoming, because these are all people who want to learn more about dinosaurs, or maybe they want to learn more about faith and science, maybe they want to learn more about creation, but this is a place that you can do that. So our dig season is open for the month of June every year, and so the rest of the time, that area is actually a working cattle ranch. So ranchers are there herding cattle around, exactly like you picture it. They actually ride horses around herding their cattle. So we're only there 1 month, and then that gives us plenty to do. We take all the fossils back with us, and we prepare them and analyze them in the museum. That's actually a student job, so students work on the fossils and help us categorize them. So that's what we do the rest of the year. So we only dig for 1 month, and then we work on them at the museum the rest of the time. So this is just a picture of our group from this year, or most of our group. So that's a sunset worship. So these are a lot of scientists and volunteers and international visitors. So yeah, so we always have a really great group of people who come out and learn from each other. And so this project was founded by Dr. Art Chadwick, and he is on this lifelong quest to just learn more about creation. He's a geologist, and he this is his passion, is to share what we're learning with as many people as we can. And so although he would have liked to have been here also talking to you about the project, he was out sharing with other groups of people this weekend. But he founded the project, and so everything has been built on his work there. So the Hansen Research Station is located on the Hansen Ranch, which is, as I mentioned, a working cattle ranch. And it's a really beautiful place to spend June, to wake up every morning. I really love my time out there on the ranch. So this is our original field station. So this was built in 2000, and it was about 1,200 square feet. It served our needs for a while, but the project has grown over the years. And we had just about outgrown the building. And in any case, disaster struck, and actually a small tornado came through, not when we were there, thankfully, that was a blessing. But it destroyed the old research station, and we really needed something else. And so God has blessed us with, through the help of many Maranatha volunteers and other volunteers, we have a beautiful new field station. It's a really neat place to spend time in the summer. So we have a nice space for meals and just to hang out when the weather's bad. But it is a really great blessing, and it's truly what we needed now that the project has gotten bigger. So every day, we wake up, and I don't know if you can see, there's a little road there on top of the ridges. So we take that road. So most of us hike out. It's about a mile. It's not too far. And we walk all the way down from camp at the top down to the dig sites. And so that's where we'll start digging. So our main work sites are called quarries. And this is a typical quarry. And you can see our volunteers, a lot of students in there working. And what they're doing is they're really carefully removing the sediment or the dirt from around the bones. And so they're uncovering the fossils a little bit at a time. It's very careful work. You have to be very patient. But that's what they're doing. They're just moving dirt a little bit at a time. So at first you use really big tools. Up at the top you can use shovels, and then as you get closer to where the bones are, you have to use smaller and smaller tools. And then when you find a bone, you have to switch to very small tools like dental picks and little brushes. So it takes a lot of patience. So what are our objectives? Why do we do what we do? Why do we go there every summer and dig for these bones? Beyond just that it's really fun to dig for dinosaur bones. So our objectives are, we want to preserve scientific data. So if we don't dig the bones up, they'll eventually be lost to erosion. As the hillsides erode away, they'll take some of the bones with them. So we want to preserve them. 2, we want to set a high standard of research in paleontology. So we want the paleontology community to know that scientists who believe in the biblical account of origins can also do excellent science. So that's important to us. We want to learn more about dinosaurs, and we want to understand how dinosaurs might fit in our view of Earth history. And we want to be able to communicate what we believe and what we've learned to students, to teachers, and also at the same time, we can make friends with conventional scientists who are part of the paleontology community. So just for a little perspective, the star shows where we're digging. So it's in Wyoming. Wyoming, so we're in the least populated county of the least populated state in the United States. So it's mostly populated by cows. There are some rabbits and hawks, coyotes, but there aren't many people. So we're pretty far out there. We're about 45 minutes from the nearest town, and most of that is on dirt roads. So we're down there in that corner of Wyoming. So this is showing our main work sites. So most people who join us will dig in the main sites because they're very rich. They're full of bones. So only one person in all of my time there has come, dug, and not found a bone. And you know what? It was because she gave up too early, and she moved to another spot. The next day, the person that dug in her spot found a bone. So everybody that digs there will find a bone unless they give up too early. So these are the main dig sites. That's basically just an area of the ranch that we've excavated. But the bones are really spread all over the place. So there are many places we could dig and find fossils. So all those little red dots, those all represent places that we have found bones either exposed on the surface of the ground, or we did a little bit of digging and found bones. So they're everywhere. They're spread all across the ranch and neighboring ranches. As far as you can see, if you go out and look around, you'll find bones. So what we're actually studying is in a category called taphonomy. So taphonomy is the study of everything that happens to an organism from the time that it's alive to the time that it's excavated. So taphonomy includes the cause of death and its post-mortem history. So what happens to that organism after it dies? And so it takes into account any changes that happen after that organism was buried too. So we're studying taphonomy because we believe that this can help us to better understand, basically get a snapshot of how all these bones got there together in one place. So we use GPS, GIS technology. So we use this technology for actually making maps of all the bones in the quarry. And so we use really high resolution GPS. So this isn't like if you pull up a map on your phone and you're trying to navigate somewhere. This is way more specific than that. So we combine that high precision GPS data with digital photos of bones in the computer. And so we're able to put those things together, location plus photos. And so we can make maps that show the bones just as they looked in the ground, in their positions, but the map looks like you just took the dirt away and you just see the bones there. So I'm going to show you some pictures of that later on. So this is how precise the GPS unit is. So the GPS you have in your phone, it's pretty accurate. It can locate you to within about, it depends, it's 10 feet, maybe 30 feet. That box on the screen, that's a 1 centimeter square box. And these GPSs know the difference between each of those tiny red triangles in that box. They know that each one of those is a different point in space. That's really, really precise. So that means we can take points on a tiny tooth, and the GPS will know that each one of those points is a different point in space. It's just very, very precise. So that lets us map with a lot of accuracy. So here are the points on a bone. So they look like they're just floating in space, right? So these points are taken. You can see the guy in the picture there. He's just pointing this tool, and it registered everywhere you set that point down. You push a button, and it registers a point, and it stores it in a data system. So right now, they just look like points in space, right? So next, we take a picture of the bone, and then we just do some basic image processing, just cut it out. And then take the points, and we have a program that matches the points to the photo, to exactly where they would have been. And then that lets us do this. So now we can put it in a map of the quarry, and we can show its relationship to all the other bones around it. So I'll just kind of, at various points, update you on like what's our project towards these objectives that we have. So remember, we said we wanted to preserve scientific data that were ultimately going to be lost to erosion if we don't do anything. So far, we've collected, preserved, and curated over 40,000 bones. That's a lot. It's taken us years to do that, but we have many of them. So we say that our work has only just begun because there are many more bones to find. So we don't anticipate stopping anytime soon. Second, we said that we want to set a high standard for research in paleontology. And so far, we've been pioneers in our field in developing this very high precision mapping. We've pioneered these methods for acquiring the data, preserving it, analyzing it, understanding relationships between bones. So I'm going to show you some of the maps that we've made. And they may not mean a lot to you, but just so you can get a sense of how many bones are there and what these maps look like. So I'm going to start with the quarry that's at number 1 there. This is called North Quarry, and it's one of the very first quarries that we worked on. So I'm going to start the maps in 1999, and then I'm going to step through to today, or close to it. I think I have up through 2021, like processed and in here. So here's the map. So this is when we started in 1999. I wasn't even there yet. But I'm going to step through. So every year we expand the map. Those are all bones. Sorry, color change. We started using a white background eventually. Yeah, so you can see we're expanding this map. I mean, this is one dig site, and we have many. So this is a huge number of bones. So we can see how they're all related to each other. One thing you'll notice, a lot of people ask us like, oh, don't you find any skeletons all together? But actually we don't. These bones are all separated from each other, and they're kind of cast about. So there's 2021. So we actually have processed maps for 2022. I think the one for 2023 is done as well. I just didn't get them from Dr. Chadwick to put in my presentation. But they just expand in the same way. Let's look at another one. So we'll just look at South Quarry. So I'm not going to do the step through for this one, but I'll just show you. So this is South Quarry. So this is just about, it's about 30 feet away from North Quarry. And they're working their way towards each other. We're digging towards each other. Eventually, they're going to merge into one gigantic quarry. So yeah, that's a ton of bones in there as well. So right next door, these are Southeast and Teague. So again, you can see these massive piles of bones, just bones on top of bones. Let's see. This one is, oh, okay. This is, I think I forgot the title on this one. This is called Gar Quarry. So this one's a little bit different. So instead of being dominated by dinosaur bones, this one is full of really small stuff, like crocodile teeth and turtle shells, turtle bones. So we just find different things in this one. And so you can see a lot of small stuff, not a lot of big stuff. That's of interest to us as well. So comparing the different dig sites and what they have in them and why they might be distributed that way is interesting to us. So this one, okay, yeah. So that's up to 2021. So we found a lot of small stuff there. One really important find from that quarry, this is a mammal jaw in the ground. So in these layers, mammal bones are not very common. So this is kind of a rare find. So this was very interesting to us. So it's actually from something kind of like a big possum. It's definitely not a possum you would want to run into when you're taking the trash out. It's probably pretty big and scary. But yeah, so pretty interesting. So it's not all dinosaurs. So there are other animals that are buried with the dinosaurs, and that tells us about the community that these dinosaurs were a part of. They weren't just living alone, they lived as part of a community with other animals too. Oh, do you see the bars? Those are centimeters. See on the card? So that's a scale bar on there. I don't know how well you guys can see it, but yeah, so the jaw is probably about 8, maybe 8 centimeters. Yeah. So this is another really important find. So in this picture, it's upside down. That's actually a triceratops skull. You can see the 2 horns pointing into the ground. It was massive. To get it out, we needed one of those things that you use to like pull an engine out of a car. I think you guys have one here in that shop, but you need that thing to pull it out. And then we needed a 4-wheeler to help get the leverage to like lift it and get it into a truck bed. It's extremely heavy. So there it is flipped over. So we got it back to our museum. Yeah, so it's been partially restored, and we're at some point we're going to mount it as like a central display in the museum. It's really, really impressive. Another really neat find. So this is a hadrosaur tail. So it's pretty complete. It has all the little vertebrae all in a row. That was pretty cool. So what do we do with all this information? What do we do with our analysis of data? Well, we put it out there for the scientific community to read so that we can dialogue with other scientists. That's really important to us. We really want to open paths for discussion with other scientists who may be coming from different perspectives than us. So we've published a lot of papers about just different things that we've found out about the bones at our site. And our mapping technique was published on the front page of a journal as well, because it was just something that nobody else was doing at the time, trying to understand the relationships between bones by this type of mapping. So what does that mean for progress toward our objectives? So we said we wanted to set a high standard for research in paleontology, and so for over 25 years, we've presented our research at geological and paleontological conferences. So this is a way for us to discuss with other scientists. And more recently than that is when we were able to publish in journals, scientific journals. So this is important, opening those paths of dialogue. This is one way to do that. Another thing that we do that I think is really amazing is that we make our whole collection available for the public to access through our online database. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about, what do we do with this information? How do we make it available so people can understand more about dinosaur bones? So all the fossils that we recover from the dig site in Wyoming, we bring them back to our museum at Southwestern Adventist University, and they're all carefully prepared by students, and then they're cataloged, and then we put them in our library of bones. It's called the repository, and all the bones live there. But all of the information, all of our photos, everything we have for each and every fossil is entered into this online database, and it can be accessed from anywhere. So you can browse the collection, you can search it in very specific ways. So I'll show you just one of our favorite fossils in the collection. So this is a Nanotyrannus partial jaw with the teeth still in it. It's a pretty impressive fossil. And so all the information about this fossil is in this database. And something really neat, you can pull up all kinds of things. Here's how it looked when we first found it in the field. And then you can access, here's where it is on the map with all the other bones around it. And something really neat, I don't know that I'm going to be able to do it because my mouse is stuck. Okay, it's okay. But all the information that we've collected about a fossil is there. So researchers from around the world can access it, learn about fossils. Anybody has access to this data. We want to make it available to everybody. Okay, so we said we're trying to help answer the question, what happened to the dinosaurs? So I'm going to tell you about the standard taphonomic model. This is the thing that people thought before we started working there. So scientists had come there, they had dug for bones, and they said, okay, it looks like some dinosaurs were crossing a river, and sometimes they got swept away by flooding. Maybe this was a seasonal migration, so this repeated year after year, and they just piled up and piled up and piled up. That's how we got this massive bone bed. It must be a river. So they just thought that it was some kind of seasonal thing, and so we were just getting a pile of dinosaurs. But when we started looking carefully, we found some clues that told us that this model actually didn't apply here. So we found that our evidence actually contradicts that standard model. So one clue was the bones do not have what you would call current orientation. So if they're going down a river, they should adopt kind of a similar orientation when they're deposited by the river. That's definitely not the case. So these are, I think they're called Rose diagrams. And yeah, we're just orienting the fossils the way we found them, and you can see that fossils are oriented every which way. So there's no evidence that there was some kind of current depositing these consistently. So we also found, like I pointed out earlier, most of the bones are what we would call disarticulated. So they're totally distributed in a random way. They're not connected to each other anymore. And they also have what we would call a random horizontal distribution. So that just means they're scattered around. So yeah, there they are. So these are a bunch of ribs, a lot of ribs that you see there. Clearly not together as a rib cage, right? They're just everywhere. Now, something else that came out of our data that I think nobody would have noticed if they hadn't done the kind of mapping that we did, but we found that the bones are buried in what's called a graded bone bed. That means they're sorted by type, basically by size. So I'm going to show you what that means. This is the bottom of the bone bed. So what do I mean when I say the bottom? So it's about this much dirt, so from here to the stage, that's where all the bones are. They're in a layer of dirt. And at the bottom of that layer, that's what you're seeing here. So that's what's at the bottom. They're big, heavy bones. But what's just above those? It's a little bit smaller. And what's above that? Smaller. And what's at the top? Even smaller. That's a graded bone bed. So that didn't seem to line up with the model that was proposed. So another clue, the bones are really well preserved, and they do not have signs of any significant weathering or abrasion. So that's also not very consistent with the river model. So I'll show you what I mean. So we say that they're kind of pristine. So they look very nice, as though they just kind of recently fell out of the animal and were buried in there. But yeah, they don't have those wear patterns that you would expect with a kind of high wear, high erosion environment, like you would have abrasive environment of river flow. Also, the sheer number of animals and the area that they're distributed over, it just doesn't line up with the river model either. So a conservative estimate is that there are around 5,000 individual animals buried in the bone bed. That's a lot of animals. Now, I know we have many, 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 many bones, but when you calculate out, okay, what's the minimum number of animals that you could have here? So it's about 5,000. That's a lot of animals. So how does this help us in our progress towards our objectives? Well, we said we want to learn more about dinosaurs, how they fit our view of Earth history, and what we found was all of this evidence actually supports, it's called a depositional model, basically the snapshot of how the dinosaurs got buried. It's actually much more consistent with a scriptural view, a broad distribution of all these bones randomly scattered by something very catastrophic. So it's a lot more aligned with a global flood. You had a question? Correct. That's correct. Yeah, there are actually no human bones in that deposit, at least. So we haven't encountered any. There are bones from many, many things: fish, turtles, um, crocodiles, mammals, possums, and all kinds of dinosaurs. But yeah, no human bones have been identified in all of those. So we found that this evidence seems to fit more with something very catastrophic, which could be like a flood. So we also said we want to communicate our beliefs to students and teachers. We want to gain friends in the paleontology community. And so this is something that it's very important to us. So several thousand people have participated in our project so far or prepared fossils for us in the museum. And all of them have learned about the biblical model of Earth history, and they learn what we've learned about dinosaurs. So overall, our project has advanced paleontology and methods in paleontology, and those advances have been recognized in scientific literature. We preserved thousands of fossils and all the data with those fossils as well. And so every summer, and through our work in the museum as well, we're able to share this with students, with educators, with scientists, pastors, theologians as well. Many people who are able to join us from all over the world. So who can participate? Who can come to the dig? Well, the short answer is you can. Anybody can. We have families. My daughter just turned 7, and she's been to 6 dinosaur days. So anybody can join us. So if it's something you're interested in or that your family might be interested in, I've got some information here. Oh, yeah, you guys don't have phones like my students do you? Okay, I will get this information to the appropriate parties here, and then they can share it with you. Yeah, totally forgot about that. My students all have phones, and they probably half of them would have been on their phones during this presentation, but I will get this information. So this is our project website, and it tells you directly about the project and participating in it. And we have a link to the fossil database, so you can browse the collection of fossils. And there's one for the Dinosaur Science Museum, so just learn about what the museum does. So I will share the links. Yeah, you had a question? Oh, that's a good question. So probably the simplest answer is that these animals were living together as just a regular community of animals. So if you think about the community of animals that you have here near your campus, you have deer, raccoons, possums, snakes, right? So if a catastrophic event happened, they would all get kind of jumbled together and they would be buried as a community. And in the same way, these dinosaurs lived as a community and they were buried as a community together. Oh. Oh, that's a good question. So actually, that ranch has belonged to the same family, the Hansen family, for over 100 years, and they actually always knew that bones were there, and they knew that the bones were from something besides cows or deer. So fairly early on, they knew there were dinosaur bones, and before them, Native people lived there on the ranch, and so they actually knew about the bones too, and had stories about them as well. But we know that Native people lived there because they left their teepee rings behind, and we can still see the little stones they used to set the edge of their teepees down. They left them in a perfect circle, and they're still there today. So people have been there for a long time, and they've always known, but how we got there is that the family that runs the ranch, they're devout Christians, and they wanted to make sure that the bones on their land were used by Christians to study from their perspective, and so they invited us to come and dig there. Yeah. Okay, so that's a good question too. So If it's a really small bone fragment and it doesn't have any defining features, we may never know what it came from. But a lot of the bones that we find are intact, so we can make a pretty good guess about it. So sometimes we're not guessing at all. Sometimes we know. We can compare with complete skeletons in other people's collections, so we can say, oh, this vertebra is definitely from a hadrosaur. It has features like a hadrosaur. Or we can say, this vertebra is definitely from Triceratops because it's different. I can tell it has different features. So by comparing with other known skeletons, that's how you can identify. But yeah, absolutely. Sometimes there are bones that there's just not enough of it there. You'll never know what it is. You just write on the card, bone frag, and that's it. So, but a lot of times we're able to figure it out. Teeth are very identifiable from species to species. So, so some things it's really easy to tell. Well, I don't want to keep you guys too long. I know. Okay, I'll take one more question. But I know you guys probably have a lot of studying to do before bedtime. Yes? Oh, so kind of the same idea. You would just compare with two ways. So you can compare with animals that are known today, right? So we know what a backbone looks like. So a backbone from a dinosaur looks a lot like a backbone that you have too. So we know it's a backbone and we know how ours fit together. So we can extrapolate how they would go together too. But we can compare with large animals. The way their bones fit together is going to be really similar. Or we can compare to complete skeletons that we find already in the ground and just put it together like a puzzle that way. So yeah, there are different ways you could approach that. Oh, yes. Oh, well, so we can kind of speculate on that. So it seems that what would cause that is that animals would be in a state of decay, and then a flow of water and debris would kind of make them come apart, right? They would basically unravel. And so that's what seems like it happened. So, right, they were drowned at some stage of the flood as the flood progressed, and then they would have started to decay. And so that's just where they happened to come to rest in a flow of water and mud and debris. Seems like the most likely explanation from a geological perspective. Oh my. Well, the ranch I work on is 8,000 acres, and then the neighboring ones are even bigger, and it goes way past that, and then into Montana, South Dakota. I mean, it's not a river. It's big. Oh yeah. It's about it's about a meter. It's about like that deep. It can vary from place to place. Some places on the ranch, it thins out to about that, and that's where we find a lot of small things, right? Just like water fills in all these spaces and would go up on shorelines and things like that. I'm not a geologist, but those are kind of the explanations, is that it's just the way water made its way through, water and mud made its way through the existing terrain that was already there. Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, these are definitely fossils. They've all been permineralized. Yes, permineralized. So that means these are all mineral copies of the original bone that was there. So there's no organic material left. They're all true fossils, truly fossilized. Yes. Okay, pterosaurs are officially dinosaurs, yes. No, they're not birds, though. Oh, okay. Oh, okay, but not birds. Okay, but raptors are officially dinosaurs. Yes. Okay. He's the dinosaur. He's the paleontologist. He knows all the dinosaur groups and how how they're categorized. Okay. Okay. Should I let everybody go? You guys need to go, don't you? Okay. Or at least if you're not going to study, you need some downtime, right? Okay. Before you get to bed. Okay, well, I'll close this with prayer so you guys can get some rest. Yeah, should we kneel together? Let's do that. Okay. Let's bow our heads. Dear God, thank you for all the time that we had together today. We're thankful for all the opportunities that we have to learn about the world you created. And we know that we may not unravel every mystery, but we look forward to many discussions with you in heaven someday. I ask that you would just continue to guide and bless each of these students and all of the very devoted staff here at Ouachita Hills. We just ask that you would continue to watch over this special place. And I ask that you would just continue to be present in each of our lives. It's in Jesus' name I pray, amen.